Hi everyone, welcome back to Orchid 101. Today we're going to be talking about pots and what kind of pots to use, what is the best pot to use for your orchid, what I prefer to use versus what others may prefer to use. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details about pots because I use a wide variety of pots, as you guys can tell. But I am going to go into some demonstrations. I'm going to show you guys what kind of pots I use and for what different reasons. And just give you guys some examples of what I have in my collection of pots. And so yeah, we're just going to get right into it. Now I do have some orchids here just to kind of show you guys what kind of pots I do have in my collection. I do like to use the clay pots, as you guys can see, with the drainage hole at the bottom. For those orchids that do have, there you go again. For those orchids that do need a little bit more moisture than others, but also to allow them to drain. So for the oncidiums, for the phals, I do like to use the ceramic clay pots because I just feel like they hold the moisture in a little bit longer. You know, they just kind of stay cooler as well. So I feel like these orchids do a lot better in these kind of pots. So I do have a few of them in my collection that stay in these kind of pots. Now, for example, for this one here, I don't have an inner pot to go along with it. So when I water it, I just automatically let it drain through. But in this case here, I do have her in an inner pot. And I do allow her to drain through her plastic pot, but then I also allow it to drain through the ceramic pot. So I allow it to drain through both, because even though she does need a little bit more moisture than others, I don't want her to stay too wet like the this oncidium needs to be. So this, you know, sphagnum moss is a lot more wet than this one because this one drains out faster. So that's my reason for using clay pots, you know, just to hold in moisture longer. And then I do have plastic pots as well. And within the plastic pots, I also have plastic, you know, the plastic pots with the drainage holes. And I like to use this setup for, you know, plants like the cattleyas or the dendrobiums, just plants that don't really need to stay wet for too long. Plants that I need to have the media dry off before I water them next time. So I do like to use this kind of setup more for the plants that need to dry off really, really quick. Again, I don't really normally use plastic pots. I only like to use plastic pots mainly on shorter orchids because they're not very heavy either. So I find it really hard to keep my orchids, because I do keep them outside. So I find it hard to keep my orchids really steady on the plastic pots. When I get a strong wind or, you know, a breeze or anything like that, they tip over really easily. So most of my orchids are really large. The phalaenopsis and the dendrobiums and things like that are really high, really tall, and they sit up really high. So I normally just use the plastic pots for shorter orchids like this one, smaller, shorter orchids. Because they don't tip over as easily. But I do like the plastic pots because they also let you, they let the media dry off faster. So that's what I use the plastic pots for. Then I use the glass ceramic pots for orchids who have like the inner plastic clear pots as well. So in this case, I have this beautiful dendrobium in here that has an inner clear pot. So I like using that with, you know, the ceramic pots because, like I said, again, they're heavy, so they keep the orchids steady. And then they also allow, this one doesn't have any drainage spots, holes. So what I like about these is that if you ever want to soak your orchid, it allows you to pour the water in there, lets you soak them for a little bit, and then you can just take your pot out and drain it out. So I like the ceramic pots as well for the stability that it provides your orchid, that you can soak your orchid, and also for the decorative portion of it. A lot of ceramic pots have a lot of nice decorations on them, so I like that. And then finally, which is my newest setup, is the self-watering pots. Now I just started using these. So the reason why I started using these is because I do have a couple of orchids that I've noticed are very thirsty orchids. And so I started using this type of setup on a few of my Phalaenopsis and a few of my Dendrobiums, to where I let them sit in the self-watering pots. And the self-watering pots itself, they do have holes at the bottom. Let me see if I can just tip it over. These, the inner pot do have holes, and then they just sit in the reservoir with a little bit of water, and the string just kind of works as a wicker. So this setup has started to work out for me. As you guys can tell, this orchid is now starting to get some new growth here. The blooms will start falling off very, very shortly here because they have lasted quite a long time. I think these blooms have been on this orchid for about a month or so, I think. So yeah, these blooms have been here for a really, really long time, you know, longer than I expected them to last. So this setup has actually worked very well for this Phalaenopsis here. I also have a Dendrobium in this type of setup, and then I also have 2 other Phalaenopsis in this type of setup, which I think is working out perfectly fine. So these self-watering pots for me right now are working out very, very well. And the fact that it's clear and I can see how much water is actually in the reservoir and all of that is, you know, I'm actually liking that a lot. So this is the 3rd type of setup that I have going on right now with my orchids. Okay, so let's talk real quick about plastic inner pots. I talked about plastic inner pots a couple of times in between videos when I do the repottings and things like that, but I wanted to talk to you guys about these because there's several different varieties. They come in different colors, different sizes, different things. So plastic inner pots, if you're gonna buy them online, it's perfect, that's fine. You just have to be careful with the sizes. Normal plastic inner pots come in maybe 4 inches. I believe these are maybe like 6 inches or 5 inches. And then you have the real big ones, which are like 8 inches. So those are the sizes it comes in. And the reason why I like the plastic inner pots is because they provide you the ability to take your plant in and out of whatever decorative pot you put them in. So it doesn't matter what outer pot you put your plant in. For example, I have a lot of different decorative pots. I just go out to all kinds of stores and buy decorative pots, and you can literally buy whatever decorative pot you want to, as long as you're using an inner pot, a plastic inner pot. You can put it inside any decorative pot. If you can take your inner pot out and water your orchid, and maybe sometimes allow your orchid to just sit there like that and get some sunlight at its root system, you're doing a great job. And if you get the right size inner pot, it will basically fit inside any decorative pot that you want it to fit in. So, you know, getting the right inner pot is very important. You know, it all depends on what you're using, what size you're getting, and all of that. So inner pots come with either bottom holes only, or they come with bottom holes and side breathable holes like this one. And then they also come in clear. They come in green. They can come in, let me see if I have any other colors in here. I do have, I think I had like a clear bluish one, but I believe I used it. They come in all kinds of colors. Now, for beginners, I always recommend the clear, just the clear color, because it's easier for you to see what's going on with your roots within the pot. It's also easy for you to take your orchid out of its decorative pot and let it sit there and photosynthesize with the sun if your roots are doing poorly. If you see that your Phalaenopsis orchid or whatever orchid you're trying to grow is doing poorly, and you think that by them getting some sun in their roots is going to be the best thing for it to start doing a little better, it's easy for you to do that with a clear pot versus a green pot. This is not going to provide any light through here. So clear pots for anybody who's going to start off, and even for people who are not starting off. I, till this day, love clear pots. I ordered maybe like a packet of 12 of these, I think it was, and I bought them off of Amazon, and they were really very cheap. I think I paid maybe $10.99 for them. So I would definitely recommend clear pots. I don't think I have any orchids planted in any other color but clear. So these green ones I probably took off of other plants that I bought from a nursery. So black, green, unless you're like a super expert and you know that your root systems are doing very well and you're not going to rot them out and you're not going to overwater them and things like that, then and you feel comfortable using clear or black pots, then go for it. You know, more power to you. But if you're like me and you want to see how your roots are doing and you want to inspect your roots without having to go through the trouble of taking it out of its media, look at the roots, putting it back in the media and all of that, the clear pots are your best choice. Now, there are plastic pots that work as decorative pots as well. That's fine. I showed you where I had one in a plastic pot. You can have a clear pot inside a plastic decorative pot, and that works as well. As long as you can take your clear pot out of the plastic pot, it's perfectly fine. So I have had this set up before for many orchids, but like I said, most of my orchids are really tall, so the clear pot inside of the plastic pot really wasn't working out for me because it was very easy for it to tip over, fall on the ground, the media was everywhere, and I would have to repot and repot, and it was costing me a lot more media than I wanted it to. So I stopped using a lot of the clear pots for that, the plastic decorative pots for that reason. Another setup that I have, which I also recommend to some people, is just the regular plastic clay looking pot, but it's actually plastic with the holes at the bottom. I have several orchids in this type of setup. So the clay pot, the plastic pot that looks like a clay pot, but it's actually plastic, and it has the holes at the bottom. I like using this type of setup too because it's actually plastic. It has the holes, so it will drain out, and it's not as heavy as the clay pot. So, and it won't hold in as much moisture as a clay pot. So if you want to use this type of setup, but you like the look of a clay pot, which I sometimes do because I love the clay pot brownish look, but I don't necessarily need a certain type of orchid to hold as much moisture, I like using this plastic pot because it won't, affect the root system, or it won't rot them out. It won't hold as much moisture. The orchid won't constantly be wet. So I like this kind of setup too, if you guys can find this type of pot. So just a little bit, I already mentioned the self-watering pots as well. I bought this set at Amazon. It came 6 to the pack, and like I said, it comes with the clear reservoir and the white pot inside. So this is a great setup if you guys want to try to, you know, start using that setup. So like I mentioned earlier, the ceramic pots to put around or outside, they are, you can literally choose whatever you want. I mean, I have a giant collection of just random glass pots. I have a lot of pots, glass ceramic pots or glass clay pots, because my orchids are heavy. I keep them outside, so I need them to be in a heavy type of container so that they don't flip over with the wind, or you know, somebody knocks into them and things like that. So most of my orchids are all set up in heavy ceramic containers, you know, decorative pots or some type of heavy container. But you can basically find containers or pots anywhere. You can find them with, you know, hanging ropes if you want to do something with, you know, to hang, which is very, very nice. I actually bought this one and I have not used it yet, but I am hoping to use it soon. I just want to find an inner, a clear inner pot that will actually fit it quite nicely and not, you know, touch all the way down. So, you know, maybe one of these will probably fit it. So it's kind of nice to put an orchid in and have it just hang. So I like this pot. You know, also if you want to do like a theme, or if you just want to have like a nice decoration, you know, you can go out and buy a nice decoration. I have Mickey Mouse pots, or, you know, just anything. I love going out to, you know, thrift stores or hardware stores and just buying different types of pots. They're heavy. My orchids love them. Some of them come already with the drainage holes at the bottom, so they work also, and it's super nice. You can even buy things that were not even, I have things that were not even supposed to be pots that I use as pots. You know, candle, after I burn the candle, I use them as pots because I just feel like eventually I will be able to use them as pots, you know, with little inner pots. I can fit it in here. Maybe not that one because that one's too big, but with little inner pots, I can fit it in there and it will work just as well, you know, temporarily, or if I find something else later on. So like I said, things that were at one point a candle holder, I use them as pots. So like I said, you know, you just have to be creative. It doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. I don't, you know, people that grow orchids sometimes say, oh, it's so expensive because the orchids are so expensive. Yes, the plant itself sometimes is expensive. However, your tools and your pots and your media and the things that you use as supplies to make your plant happy does not need to be expensive. I know people who actually have not been able to find these pots, so they have used bottles, regular old-fashioned soda bottles. After they're done with them, they cut them down at the bottom, poke holes all over the bottom of the bottle, and use them as pots. Put some media in it, put the flower, the orchid in it, and there you go. You have a clear orchid pot. And then they put that into a ceramic pot or any type of pot, and you didn't even know that that was the bottom of a soda bottle. So, you know, like I said, it does not have to cost you a lot of money. You can get creative. So, you know, make your flowers, your orchids happy with what you got. So that's just a little bit of what I use and why I use it. Thank you again for following me on YouTube, following me on Facebook. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the little bell so that you can get notifications. I do try to post as often as I can. We do have a Facebook group. I've put the link down below. As always, thank you so much for being part of my community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye.